Cool. So to get started, I'll just maybe tell you a little bit about myself. I come from a place that not that many people have heard about, Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's a really nice place to visit. There's a lot of cool tech stuff happening there too, so if you want a job or you just want to go on vacation, great place. This is the reason why I haven't retired yet. It takes all my money. That's my dog. It's a pandemic dog. The dog has an Instagram, as you heard. But that's kind of what I do outside of coding and tech stuff. So a little bit about myself. I've been in tech and startups for 6 years, which when I tell people that, I feel like I'm just like a small baby in the tech world. And you get other people that are like, wow, you're like an OG. And I'm like, an OG in what? Not sure. About a year ago, I decided to leave the kind of like the tech lead, super tech person role that I was in and go down engineering management because I decided I like people a lot more than I like tech. I like taking care of people who like tech. So that's what I do now. I work at a company called Iterable. So what they do is unified customer experiences for their clients on every single interaction that you can have with your customer. They're a double unicorn. It's got 600 employees. There's a ton of job opportunities if you're into React or if you're into Scala. So if you are, let me know. Or we might be a right fit for your company as far as providing some customer experiences for you. All right, so a little bit of an imposter syndrome after listening to everybody for the past few days. I'm not here to revolutionize anything. You got a lot of people talking. They're showing you about Web3. They're talking about the next biggest framework for developing in. I can't offer any of that to you. What I can do and what I hope to accomplish today is to share a little bit of a rough situation you go through as an engineer and how to problem solve it and just kind of help you guys so that you guys don't have to go through the same issues. So the talk today is about leveraging hybrid apps for secure auth. That's a mouthful. I tried to explain to my parents what this meant, and they went to sleep. So let's kind of break this down. First of all, what's a hybrid app? We use this word, but I want to make sure that everybody kind of understands it. It's when an application has both statically generated pages that are created at build time and server-generated pages that are created when they're requested. So NextJS, kind of like the forefront of doing apps like this, and so I'm assuming that if you're building a hybrid app, you're probably using them. So why does this matter? Why do we care about hybrid apps, and why do we care about secure authentication? Well, it's to keep you out of situations like this. We've all been there. I remember the first time as an intern where I saw an authentication problem happen in production. Somebody lifted the authentication gate to our database, and anybody, if they landed on that URL, could view all of our customers' information. It was kind of a nightmare. And more recently, I had this problem where we were trying to fix performance, so we introduced caching into our database, and so customer A would log in, and they would see customer B's information because they logged in at the same time and we cached one. So it's pretty gross. I'm not going to tell you what company that was at. It's definitely not the one I work at currently for legal reasons. No, really, it's not the one that I work at right now. But so this kind of begs the question, why don't we just use SSR? That's traditionally what apps were used to do authentication, and the answer is because we got to go fast. If you are a front-end, you're not a front-end developer unless you jump on the hottest, newest bandwagon to get 10 more milliseconds of speed on your site, right? So we know that static sites are better for performance, and so we want to use them as much as we can. Also, we may work for a company that really cares about SEO, and so we may have to use static. So then you're like, okay, then why don't I just use static sites? That's fine, I'll just use SSG then. Well, you open up a can of worms there, because a lot of people, when they're using SSG, they don't really securely save their authentication tokens or their information. It's just kind of like available for anybody to scrape and go see. So that's where we find the sweet spot for these apps. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Bellhops, the company that I worked at before Iterable, pre-2021, and kind of like what was going on there. So we had a problem. We had insecure credentials. We had pretty base credentials. We didn't even have username and password. So that should say enough. We had API timeouts due from bad actors. And a lot of times what you see in production companies is you have over-resources sometimes in one technical department, but not in the other. And so we were basically bootstrapping our platform together, and we had a ton of web engineers that were like ready to do work, but what are we going to do about API timeouts? It's not really our problem, not our thing. And we had a complete SSG setup. We were really going head first. We were using this framework called react.js at the time. So nothing was using anything. It's kind of dead now. And we had an authorization header just like in the console, so anybody could go see it. And that kind of it's not great. On top of that, we had a kind of a clunky authorization header, authorization layer that led to a pretty bad developer experience. And on top of that, multiple session and state management. And it's kind of funny when you talk about it because you're like, how could you end up there? But you can, and it's very easy. So we were a little bit of this. That was basically us. It was kind of a party, but it was definitely a dumpster fire. So here's how we fixed it. So I can kind of take you through it. I narrowed it down into 3 steps. They're not equal 3 steps, but it's a place to start. So the first is kind of identifying what a jot is. Don't ask me why it's spelled JW2 and pronounced jot. Can't find any information on that. But a JSON web token, in the simplest form, is a compact and self-contained way for securely transmitting information between parties as a JSON object. So what does that look like? Well, there's something on my screen, but there's not something up there. Can you get a little bit of help? Oh, there it is. Okay, awesome. So this is a jot. So it's got 3 parts to it: your header, your payload, and a signature. And it's encrypted or encoded, and you can decode that into the information you want. So this is kind of like the best way to grant authentication. You send your credentials in, and you come back, and you get a jot. So, right, you fetch your jot. You should have one API request to go fetch your jot. Doesn't really return anything about the user or any information that you want yet. It just gives you back that. And then you use that as a barrier token on your authorization on any other subsequent request, so that you're not re-providing those credentials. They don't live anywhere at that point. You just have this encoded jot. So you just throw that bad boy in local storage, right? No. Please don't do that. So that takes us to step 1. Choose your auth manager. I don't know what's going on. There we go. So this is NextAuth. This is just one of the options that you can use. I don't want to certainly push any product, but if you use this, if you used Auth, they all have their ups and downs. But you want to kind of choose one and embrace that one. And I'm kind of going to go through kind of like what it looks like to implement one. So the one that I chose for the projects that we're working on there, it was Auth, NextAuth. So it's pretty simple. You create a provider for whatever you're doing, and that can be email, credentials, some type of single sign-on thing. And you just kind of like create this little file with this information in there. And then, I don't know, this thing really hates images. But what I found is then to wrap your app in your session provider. And then my favorite part of this was any page that needs authentication is to wrap it in this layout component. And in that layout component, you can then decide and do your kind of ifs and checks. If there's a session available, you use say that you're logged in, and then you have information to show, and if not, ask them to log in. So kind of what this looks like as a breakdown is you've got your UI, and what NextAuth does is it creates a route in your application that does the authentication for you. So your UI has a button. When you press that button, it sends a request to that route. That route then has your bypass header, your authorization header, sends those credentials to your backend API, and then gets back your JOT. And your JOT stays there. And then it returns back an object of all the other information that was sent back with your JOT, like some basic user information, or you can even reduce this down to like a Boolean of if they're auth, if that's really all you want. That's kind of the breakdown of that. So this is Bellhop's website. This is kind of how it worked. This was a static page. It stayed a static page. But all that happened was when you hit go to reservation after filling out your information, this page didn't send the request. The server-side rendered page sent the request to our API. So step 2. This is where it gets really fun. So you can use your authentication session manager with something like React Query, which was like one of my favorite tools out there. I really hate Apollo. Don't get me started. Still some frowns. Really like React Query. It plugs in directly to this, so you can manage your session and your auth session in one place. And this will make things a lot less clunky for you. So kind of how this looks is now you're in your UI, you send a request to get some information back from your API, and your header with your authorization token is now sent through, and your object of whatever you're trying to come back comes back to you. So what were some benefits that we saw out of doing this? Well, we found out it was a very much code it and forget it type process. Once you set it up, we never really touched it again. Because of all the out-of-the-box features and things like that, it's very easy to maintain. It never crossed over into any other new features that we were developing. And then we ended up building kind of this extra layer of protection for our API. We now had like its own set of like timeouts within this kind of like API route that we had created on the front end, so that we wouldn't bog down our API or our back-end API while we didn't have enough engineers to maintain it. It's clean, standardized code. That's always helpful, right? It's a lot better than kind of reinventing the wheel yourself. And we really enjoyed the one source of truth for having session and like your session objects and your auth in one place. And the best part about it was we were able to pivot simply. So a goal for us was to move away from our kind of unsecure credentials and get into like single sign-on. So this made the lift on the front end nearly like negligible. All you'd have to do is provide another provider in, and that was it. There was no extra other work. Everything was taken care of the same way. So that's it. That's all I had for you. I hope that this gives you a little bit of help when you're creating some auth on your apps. Thank you.